You're listening to Living Free, your podcast for a life full of freedom and magic. I'm your host, Tanja Hirsch, and I hope that every time you listen, you feel a little bit more inspired to follow your intuition and to create a life beyond your wildest dreams. Hello, my loves, and welcome back to the Living Free podcast. I'm so grateful you're listening, and today I have a really touching interview with Amy Natalie to share with you. It was actually the first time I ever cried on an interview because for some reason our paths have been so similar, and even the time frame what she went through spoke to my soul, and I really felt like time leaping back to that moment when she shared, and it really touched my heart, my soul, my whole being. I had full body chills, and I hope it inspires you to see that these obstacles along the way and the feel you might feel right now are completely normal. They are part of the process, but not so many people talk about it. So I'm really happy to share this beautiful interview with you. And before we dive into the interview, I have an amazing, exciting announcement to make, and I'm literally bubbling up with excitement for this because, as you might know, in-person retreats are my life purpose. Like, there's nothing more in this lifetime that I enjoy more than holding space for women in a really intimate space. And I was so sad I cried at the closing circle of my last retreat because I put a lot of soul and heart into creating this business that was mainly in Europe. And even though I knew I was teaching and guiding women online, and even though I knew I was gonna create something bigger here, a retreat center one day, I didn't know when I could be able to host retreats, especially with everything that's going on in the world right now. And it came through so clearly that I want to create 3 retreats this year. And the first retreat, I'm so excited for this. It's gonna be an in-person retreat where I live on this part of Morea, where I show you this lifestyle that I created and to celebrate your success. But this specific retreat is just for the sisters who join Living Free the journey. So after these 3 months deep dive where we transform and heal and share from the heart and really dive deep, you have the opportunity to come to Morea, and this program is for free who join the journey. You just cover your expenses for food and accommodation, so the program is included in the journey. And I'm so excited for this because imagine you meet all these incredible women, you've been through this process in person, and I can't even describe how excited I am for this. And it's a real purpose to travel and to experience this new life that you will be creating, no matter how your journey of living free might look like. For some it will be breaking free from toxic relationships, from partners, from their job, from their current situation. Maybe you just want to feel love for yourself, to learn how to accept yourself. This journey is really your unique story of living free, and that can look like however your soul is calling it to be. And if you want to know more about it, I'm so happy to hop on a call with you to share, to talk with you about your vision, about your dream, and to see if this journey is for you. And after this in-person retreat, I'm also gonna offer 2 retreats, but I'm not diving into this right now too much because I'm gonna share more about it. I just wanted to let you know retreats are back, but this time on my little paradise island, and I can't wait for you to see this feminine, magnetic, absolutely stunning paradise island in French Polynesia. One is going to be adventurous. We're gonna go swim, snorkel with whales. We're gonna swim with rays and sharks, paddle to islands. Like I have so many ideas for this adventurous retreat, and there's one very intimate retreat planned for a deep healing journey. So they're completely different, and maybe one is already resonating more with you. So just to let you know, Living Free the Journey starts on the 2nd of February. So if you feel the calling, I will link all the infos in the show notes. Go and check it out. And now I'm so excited to share this interview with Amy Natalie with you. Amy is an empowerment coach and embodiment guide for women, and she has inspired thousands of women around the world with her work centered on empowering women to embody their feminine energy and to follow their soul's calling so they can show up in this world as their fully expressed true selves. And I love that so much because it resonates so much with my work as well. And in this interview, she shares her unique story, how she got a divorce at the age of 27 and for the first time really chose herself in her life for the first time, and how she overcame clinical depression and traveled around the world, and how this whole magical journey unfolded, how she broke free from her old identity and really reconnected to her feminine essence and stepped into the leader she is today. Amy has a true gift for bringing women together in sisterhood to heal and rise together in community. And through her group programs, masterminds, retreats, and online courses, Amy guides women to connect to their unique soul mission to embody their feminine expression and to confidently take inspired action to bring their visions to life. And I hope this interview touches your soul as much as it did mine, and I can't wait for you to meet Amy now in the Living Free podcast. So welcome to my podcast, Amy. I'm so grateful to have you here, and that you dive so naked with a stranger today.
Yeah, fully naked. Here we are.
So the first question I would like to ask you, and I didn't tell you on purpose, is what does living free mean to you? The first thing that pops up.
I think about this a lot because freedom is really one of my core values. And obviously the word freedom means different things for different people. For me, freedom is around freedom to be your authentic self and to not have to conform or to behave a certain way in order to be accepted or approved of. So part of living free is being my authentic self and continuing to discover her and who she is, and not playing small or not dimming my light in order to fit in. And that's kind of like the first thing that really comes to mind. And the second thing that comes to mind, or that's in my heart around living free, is really living a life that is authentic to your soul. So freedom to me means a lot of authenticity, but freedom to be who you are, to make the choices that are in your highest alignment and that are going to create a life that allows you to feel joy and pleasure and to make those choices that are aligned with your highest good, which essentially means for the highest good of all. So that's really, to me, what living free means.
Oh my God, I just had chills all over my body because it feels like you're speaking directly from my soul. You're even using the same words that my soul is expressing. It's really, thank you so much for sharing. And I could totally agree on that answer. So for those who don't know you, we kind of have a similar story. We just ended up in a different setting. But if you take us back to your life where everything seemed perfect on the outside, but like you said, it wasn't in alignment with your soul, how did your life look like back then? And how did you feel inside that made you realize something had to change?
Yeah. Going back to that time in my life, to be honest, looking back, it almost feels like a different lifetime. Like it's part of my life, but it feels like so long ago, and it feels like such a different version of me. Like it was me, but there's been so much change and transformation, and my life looks so different and feels so different than how it used to, that sometimes it takes a minute to like reconnect with that younger version of myself. So really the pivotal moment in my journey was when I went through my first spiritual awakening when it was around 26 years old. And at that time, what my life looked like is I had followed my path to becoming a nutritionist and a health coach. And I was seeing patients in person and working on kind of, I wouldn't say surface level, but really the basics of wellness, right? And I was also married, and we had a 3-bedroom house. We lived in San Diego. Our finances were all, in order. And from the outside, everything looked picture perfect. And if you had seen pictures of our wedding and kind of what the perception from the outside world was, oh, she has everything put together. She's on the path to success that I guess society would deem as successful, right? And so there I was with my external reality looking a certain way, but inside I was in a lot of pain. And I was in a lot of emotional pain. They talk about depression as a really silent disease, and there's so much shame that comes with depression. And I was told probably when I was 18 or 19 years old, that when I was first diagnosed with depression, that I had a chemical imbalance in my brain and that I would always have to be on medication. And I had been to therapy a lot and really was in a place there, 25 years old and struggling with the emotional pain of negative self-talk, feeling hopeless, feeling like something was always off, constantly complaining about things, always feeling like one area of my life or another, there was a problem. And it was hard because I was so mad at myself, because I was like, why can't you just be grateful? Why can't you just appreciate what you have? Like, you have everything. What's wrong with you? And so in addition to how I was feeling on the inside, I was also struggling with a lot of shame and a lot of self-judgment and guilt of, why can't I just be happy? And at the same time that I was struggling with mental health issues, I was also struggling with my digestion. I was struggling with some women's health issues, some hormonal issues, and my body, now looking back, I know was trying to get my attention, was trying to speak to me. And so in this quest for figuring out why am I so unhappy, what's wrong with me, trying to fix it, started to read some personal development books, went to seminars, worked with coaches, worked with healers, and finally got to a breaking point where I hit a rock bottom, where I felt like I had tried a lot of things. I had a lot of self-awareness. I had learned a lot of things, but the missing piece was that I was trying to figure it all out on my own. And it wasn't until the moment where I finally gave up, where I was just like, I surrender. I remember sitting in the bathtub, crying, just so exhausted of hearing my own story, exhausted of complaining, exhausted of being unhappy, like just being so tired of the reality that I was living in and being frustrated with myself. And I remember looking up, and up until that point in my life, I had never prayed. I had never really had a spiritual practice in this way. And I just looked up and I said, there has to be another way. Like, please help me. I've tried to figure this out. I've tried everything that I can, and there has to be a reason why I'm feeling this way. Like, please, God, universe, whoever's out there, like, I need your help, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And it was in that moment that I really surrendered and allowed myself to be guided and supported. And that led me to a lot of signs that were so obvious that I wasn't seeing before. And honestly, as I got out of the bath and went to my phone to look at something, I got an email from a healer that I had worked with a few years before. And she messaged and said, I know you never mentioned something about your marriage, but a lot of the symptoms that you're having seem to be related to resistance in a relationship. She was like, I think there's something there. And that was the first of many very obvious signs that I was being guided to release my marriage. And the last piece I want to share there is that leaving my marriage and getting to that place of clarity did not happen overnight. It took years. It took 3 years. And I believe that the symbolism behind leaving my marriage was not about leaving that relationship, because it was a safe relationship. We had a good friendship. Like, there were a lot of things that were working. But really what that choice was is, for the first time in my life, choosing me and choosing my own happiness instead of being a people pleaser, instead of trying to conform to society, and really starting to listen and live from my soul, not from my ego of wanting to be loved and accepted at all costs. So that was really, that was in end of 2016. And here we are, 2022. And I'm, on the journey to continue listening to that inner knowing and being guided on the path.
Oh my God, I think this was the first time I teared up in my own podcast, because it really feels like you're telling my story, even the same time frame. And I remember this moment, you had it in the bathtub, I had it on my living room floor, and my body was so tired. I just broke down and I cried. And in this moment, my intuition was so clear. And I also asked for guidance. I had no other choice but to surrender. And I realized how I'm convincing myself that I should be happy doesn't work anymore. And I can't continue this life that I was living back then. And in this moment, my intuition spoke to me. And I still get chills when I remember this feeling, because it was the moment I promised to myself that I will listen to my intuition no matter what. And it's like your journey unfolded so beautifully too. And it takes courage to really listen to it. And I think every single person on this planet has this intuition, but we are so conditioned to listen to our mind and what society, what our family surroundings, how do you say it, expect of us, that we don't allow ourselves to listen what we truly want. We don't choose ourselves. We choose a life that's in alignment with everyone else but ourselves. And I think that's why it became such a big mission for both of us to connect women back to this wisdom, to this inner knowing, to live a life that's in alignment with the soul. Because like you said, I think for me, depression means that every time I'm in these modes, it feels like I'm not listening to my soul and I'm living a role that's not me. Like when I was depressed, I really felt like I'm living someone else's life and that my soul was tired. So it sent me these huge waves of depression. And when we start to follow this journey that's in alignment with our soul, who we truly are, what we want, what we desire, and allow ourselves to go to these big desires, that's when the spark in the eyes come back. That's when we feel alive again. And it's so beautiful to see how your journey unfolded. So when you take us back to the moment you made the decision, you chose yourself over a life that looked good on the outside, you desired a life that felt good. How did your journey continue, and what helped you during this process to not be, like the effect of osmosis, to listen to what other people thought in this process? Because I can imagine it's not approved by all of your surroundings.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing such beautiful wisdom on your experience as well, and of your journey. I can definitely relate to all of it. And yeah, I had a moment too in a meditation where I made a commitment to myself. It was a devotion. It was an oath similar to you. And the question that came through in the meditation was, Are you going to keep trying to make everyone else happy, or are you going to choose your own happiness? And that was the moment where it was like, I'm not willing to do this anymore. And even furthermore, I'm willing to risk it all. Like, I'm willing to risk everything that I have, even if, let's say, my parents are unhappy or disown me, even if I lose all my friends. Like, I had to be willing to get to that place where I was like, okay, if it's just me and God, I'm doing it. And that was really the devotion. And also moving through a divorce process, obviously there's so many other people who are impacted. And I was very conscious and aware that my decision was going to be received by different people differently. And I trusted that the people who truly loved me would continue to be in my life and to support me. And it wasn't easy. There were a lot of moments where not only I felt my own pain of leaving an old identity behind, but also the pain of the people that I did really care about and really loved. And so the devotion throughout that time period was to move from love, even if I was being faced with someone who disagreed or was hurt by me, that I would show up as lovingly as I possibly could. And I also would never self-abandon. So even if someone was upset, I was willing to stand in my truth. And ultimately, it's hard to see it, especially if you're on the other end. But ultimately, if I'm being inauthentic and I'm not living in my truth, then that doesn't serve my partner, my family, anyone, because they're living a lie too. You know, they're going to feel it one way or another. They're going to experience it one way or another. So those were some of the things that mindset wise and on a soul level that I kept coming back to. And really my meditation practice is what got me through it. And I really believe that meditation is what helped me to heal from depression, along with a lot of the other work that I did, but really eventually to be able to come off antidepressants after years and years of being on them and doing some deeper healing. But having a meditation practice that taught me how to sit with myself, to be quiet, to listen to those whispers of my soul, to reconnect with myself when I felt afraid or when I felt unsure, is coming back to that quiet space within myself. And what meditation also did was help me to, I almost call it like a little antenna. It's like an antenna where you're aligning with the frequency of love, or it's like it creates that channel for alignment. It clears out all of the mental trash, and it clears out all of the attachment to thoughts that aren't serving you. That then creates that channel for truth, and that creates the channel for love, right? So meditation was such a huge part of that process. And I still, use meditation. I've evolved my practices over time and have continued to lean more into some of the feminine embodiment practices, but meditation honestly changed my life. And it really is something that I'm forever grateful for.
So beautiful. So when you look back and you had all these practices that guided you, and finally you created the life of your soul, of your truth, what changes did you make and how did you end up in the place you are now? Like, how did your life unfold from 2016 to now? What is different? How do you feel, and what also circumstances in your surroundings changed?
Yeah. So what I love to share about the work is that it's not that challenges don't come up along the way. Like, I'm still human. I still have moments where I feel disconnected, where I feel sad, where I feel whatever, like not in alignment. However, the empowerment of knowing that I can make it through, and having all of these tools and resources when those challenges arise, and the self-awareness, there's a different way that we can move through those challenges. And one of those pieces is really about emotional intelligence and allowing myself to fully feel my emotions when they come up. So it's almost like, life is still happening. There's friends and there's business and there's money and there's all the things that everyone has challenges with, right? But being able to show up to those challenges from a place of truth and connection, and also being able to move through those deeper emotions. I'm a Scorpio rising, that's part of my astrology chart, and I have very deep emotions that come up, and learning how to ride the waves of my emotions and how to hold myself in compassion when I'm in those spaces versus judgment has been a really, really key. So after I got divorced and finally took the leap to have the courageous conversation and make the decision, it was almost as though the universe opened doors for me. It was almost as though the universe was like celebrating me for the courage and for living in alignment with my truth. And my vibrational frequency, the energy that I was operating from, it was like a complete 180 to how I was living before. So I was in this space of deep gratitude and awe and wonder. And this is how a lot of people describe once they've been through the initiation of a spiritual awakening. It's almost like this feeling of bliss for the first time. And my body started to heal. I started to lose the weight that I had put on. I, for the first time, started to experience and feel peace and clarity. And I remember this moment where I was like, I love my life. And it was like, I had never, ever experienced a feeling like that in my whole life, in 28 years, where I could really say like, wow, I love my life. And, it really took daily devotion to my meditation practices, daily devotion to my gratitude practices, daily devotion to showing up to do the work. And what happened was, because my frequency raised so much, is I started to manifest and attract things that I had always desired. So deep, authentic relationships with women, which I would call soul sisters, sisterhood. I had always struggled with my relationship with women in the past. And a lot of that was because I had so much self-judgment and so much taking so many things personally. And that was being projected into my relationships with other women. And the more authentically I started to show up with vulnerability, not pretending that everything's okay, not pretending that everything's perfect, but being my authentic self, letting myself be seen, that's what opened the door to these deeper, beautiful connections. And I literally would not be where I am today at all if it wasn't for the beautiful women who have showed up in my life. It's almost like they showed up out of the woodworks, like out of nowhere. All of these women like started showing up both in my personal life and then also in my business. Like my group program started to fill. I'd always wanted a group program, and I just couldn't figure out how I would possibly ever get, more than 2 clients at a time to sign up for something. And all of a sudden there was this new opening in my business where I started to see myself as a leader, and where I was bringing women together, and where women were being magnetized to the work, to my energy. And, it wasn't all butterflies and rainbows. And I would say at the beginning, there was so much energy expansion that happened in such a short amount of time. And so through that, and through me being on my authentic path, I have attracted the money, the friends, the opportunities, the experiences that are a match for the vibration that I live in and that I'm devoted to. And also, that doesn't mean that I'm in that space all of the time. So learning how to navigate those crunchy spaces where things feel out of alignment, and being willing to look at, okay, what needs to be released? What's no longer in alignment? What is this feeling of anxiety or depression that is coming up for me, trying to teach me, like you were talking about earlier? And so Yeah, this soul journey continues to surprise me. Here I am. I just finished an 8-month nomadic journey and landed in a random town in North Carolina called Asheville. And if you had even, if you had paid me to say that I would live here, I'd be like, no way. Like I've never even heard of that place, but here I am, and the journey continues. So yeah, that's really what's available when we listen to our truth, is we get really big, beautiful surprises from the
Totally.
universe.
Totally. Thank you so much for sharing. And I have the same feeling. As soon as we really commit and devote to our soul's path, it's like everything else falls apart naturally. Like the wrong people fall apart. The place where you live in, if it doesn't feel aligned, falls apart. Everything falls into place. But at the same time, these synchronicities and these magical moments where I had so many moments when I arrived here in Montreal where I was just like, this can't be true. If I would wake up, I would be like, of course, this is a dream. Like a manta ray showing me the way to a person I had to meet, or like all these moments where I was just in awe of what's possible if we finally find the courage. And this is the leap you talked about, is the biggest step to really say, no matter what, even if the world breaks apart, I follow this truth. And even if it means to disappoint people, and even if it means to leave loved ones, because I'm on a mission and I have to follow this truth.
Yeah. Yeah. That feeling of awe that you're talking about, I walk around my home here and I couldn't imagine anything more beautiful or more perfect where I'm supposed to live. And I look at my friends and I look at my business and my clients, and I am in awe. It blows me away. It's so powerful when you're living in alignment, what opens up for you.
Yes. And I love that you shared, because sometimes it just seems like it's always butterfly and rainbow, but it's definitely not. And I think the more we step into this path, we more learn to really feel and embrace the depth of our soul, and to feel these really deep emotions that we never learned to hold ourselves in. And it was the same for me when I arrived here. There was so much rage and anger and sadness coming up, and I never felt this. I never had the tools to hold myself in it. And when I really expressed it, sometimes I would just dive underwater and scream, or to have all these tools to express these feelings. It felt like my heart cracked open even more, and I was able to feel so much gratitude and joy and magic in the simplest moments. I would feel these waves of bliss rushing through my body when I looked at a sunset. I could cry because of the beauty of nature. And I think it's in direct connection on how much we are willing to feel these deeper emotions that society calls like bad emotions, but they're not. They're part of who we are and of our aliveness. And as long as we suppress these emotions and run away from them and lock them in our own basement, how I like to call it, we will never be able to experience this kind of magic. And that's why we think this life is just for the chosen ones, just for some people. But it's really accessible for everyone, because everyone has a soul and a soul mission. So what helped you on this journey? I'm curious, what were your practices and your tools to be able to hold yourself in these messy, sticky, deep emotions?
Yeah, I think the first practice that really allowed me to sit with myself in that space was doing inner child work. And I've done a lot of inner child work with myself, with my clients, and really allowing that younger version of myself who still exists within me the space to feel, not making her wrong, not judging her, but sitting with her when she wants to throw a tantrum, or when she's upset, or when she's feeling sensitive. I used to be like, oh, I'm so sensitive, I'm too sensitive. And it's like, yeah, actually, that's my little girl who wants me to hold her, and who doesn't want to be judged for feeling sad right now, because that's just how she feels. And so I would say inner child work has been extremely transformational to cultivate a deep compassion and love for myself in those moments, because what we naturally do as women is we normally abandon ourselves in those moments when we're feeling quote unquote weak, or if we're being reactive, or we're being emotional, or whatever it is. Oftentimes there's the judgment, and that's really a space to bring some deeper compassion. So that's the first practice that I would recommend for anyone who hasn't done inner child work. And then the next piece is embodiment work. And I grew up as a dancer. I was a competitive dancer when I was younger, and I've always loved to dance. And I feel like I lost that part of myself as I continued to become an adult and become more conformed to, the everyday life, working and just doing the to-do list, right? And it was about in 2020, before 2020, maybe 2019, I was starting to look around at some of the women in my industry and starting to see, what is it about that woman that's so magnetic? Like, what is it? What is she doing that's working? How is she so radiant? Right. And I started to realize that I was missing a really important feminine piece of my journey. And that was through embodiment work. So I went through an embodiment training for 10 months and really got to look at how are the ways I'm still playing small? Where are the places where I'm not allowing myself to feel my rage, to feel my sadness, to feel my grief, to feel my joy, to feel my playfulness, my pleasure, like all of the emotions. And through dance and movement, really got to explore these parts of myself that had been suppressed, that I wasn't really letting myself see. And through using these practices, which I do now in various ways. I mean, there might be times where I'm driving and all of a sudden I just like feel this frustration, or it's been building, and I'll just like grunt or yell or find a way to express it and move it. Because when we move the energy through the body, when we let it be expressed through voice, through sound, through movement, it's a somatic healing process that creates an opening for more space. So, this is really another place of emotional freedom, right? To be fully expressed in your emotions. And I teach Embody classes and have some guided morning practices to support women in getting more embodied, because I do feel like for the feminine specifically, it's so important for us to learn how to use the body as a vehicle, as a vessel for healing, right? Like we need to learn how to connect with our bodies and to honor our bodies and honor our emotions, to get into alignment and to show up as the most unapologetic, fully expressed versions of ourselves.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I think it's really the time now that the feminine is rising and we step back into our power through the body. And I think the healing journey for everyone starts with the body. Like you started as a health coach. I started also with this holistic, I wrote a cookbook and was totally in the body. And I observed this with almost every healer or coach, that they find the access to this journey because something in the body is not working, and then we want to share this. So it starts with the physical layer, and then we dive deeper until we hit the soul level. And that's when, I see the light shining around these women that really had the courage to fully shine, to step into their power, and to help each other rise. And I think that's when the world will heal, when we finally have a healthy balance between the masculine and the feminine. And I see this in so many women, and it's so beautiful. And so thank you so much for sharing all your magical wisdom. There is one last question I would like to ask you. Imagine you're a younger version of yourself. So whatever age comes up, can be a child, can be an adult. And you, through your journey, you learned something that you didn't know back then that would have helped you immensely in that moment. What would you tell your younger version? A message that you can give her?
Yeah, I always love to remind my younger self that she is lovable exactly as she is, and that she doesn't need to prove herself. She doesn't need to strive to be loved, but that exactly how she's feeling, exactly where she's at, that she is fully lovable in this moment, right here, right now.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So, how can people work with you? What do you offer at the moment? How can women connect to you?
Yeah. So the best place to start is to listen to the Feminine Frequency podcast, and you'll find lots of beautiful guest teachers and solo episodes. And it's a really, really beautiful body of work that I'm so in love with. So come on over and check out the Feminine Frequency podcast. And then the other few ways that I work with my clients is through one-on-one mentorship. I generally work for 6 months or more with my clients. So I like to go deep. I don't skim the surface. And this is really where we do full transformational healing and spiritual alignment. So anything from relationships to healing your body to getting into alignment to attract, a healthy relationship, or to create authentic connections in your relationships and really connecting to your feminine essence. And then the other offering that I have is my empowered and embodied journey, which is really to support light workers, healers, and coaches to be more fully expressed and to step into their feminine leadership. And I offer that twice a year. So that's really for a woman who knows that she has gifts to offer and she wants to start to make some money doing what she loves. And maybe there's a confidence piece or part of her that doesn't fully believe that she can do it, or just needs that extra love and support. And that's really what the empowered and embodied journey is for. So those are some ways. You can find out everything on my website, amynatalieco.com.
Amazing. I will link it in the show notes as well. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for this beautiful conversation, for diving so naked with me. And yeah, we stay connected. So much love.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope this interview touched your soul, your heart, as much as it did mine. And I can't wait for you to meet Amy, connect with her on Instagram, follow her magic, and let us know what you took out of this conversation. And I see you next week on the Living Free podcast.